Hello, welcome to episode 10 of Fish TV. I'm Phil Wilkes, this is Dr. Duncan Warning.
Hello.
And together we're the founders of 14 Fish. So this is another episode where we've got a guest on the show that Duncan has interviewed. Our guest is Dr. Richard Weaver. And what's his job title?
Head of GP school, and we talked about, really it follows on quite nicely from the interview with Dr. Nigel Watson, which some of you may have seen a few weeks back, Chief Exec of Wessex LMCs. But it follows on nicely from that because actually Nigel had talked about positive solutions, but also issues that needed addressing. One of those was workforce crisis in general practice specifically. Richard, we talked about that today, so I hope you found it interesting. Again, it is GP specific, but we think it'll be interesting to anyone, and certainly any health professional. So.
Let's take a look.
Hello. Well, I'm joined today by Dr. Richard Weaver. Richard, head of GP school, is that right?
The GP director and head of school for Wessex, yes.
And can you just explain what that involves? What does that entail?
My primary responsibility is to recruit and train young doctors to become GPs in their 3-year training programs. That's the major responsibility. But I'm also very interested in the GP Induction and Refresher scheme because I'm the national lead for that.
Okay. And I'd like to come back to that actually because I think it flows nicely on from when we had Dr. Nigel Watson interviewed a few weeks ago, which you may have seen. But before that, just I asked Nigel at the start, what are the things what do you like most about your job?
I think it's the challenge, the variety. I was a GP for 28 years and I always loved the huge unexpectedness, and the same continues in this job as well.
Yeah, I certainly found that when I was at the LMC. It's amazing the parallels that you find in other jobs that you sort of almost don't expect as a doctor. But and you know, you work for Health Education in Wessex, so I'm not surprised you didn't say the perks of the job are the best bits, but because you have to bring in your own tea and coffee almost, don't you? But but what are the worst bits of your job, do you think?
The worst bits. There are no worst bits. You know,
you love it all. Every day's a holiday.
I love challenges. Yeah, and it's really challenging, and there's lots of problems to solve. It's actually, I mean, it sounds a bit urbane, but it's helping trainees, helping doctors. You know, from the good to the bad, and even with the bad, you can do lots to help them.
Yeah.
You know, and guide them, because these are qualified professionals. So it's about doing something for them, giving them the right track to get back onto.
Which again is a parallel with medicine, isn't it? And I certainly found that as well myself at the LMC. You know, you feel very productive. You feel like you're making a difference, which is nice, and we all need that in our work, I think. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, general practice always is a challenge because you don't know what's coming through the door, and you've got fantastic things you can do, and there's huge tragedy in general practice as well, and it's working with all of that. So yes. It's making it happen, I think.
Now, I said we had Nigel on a few weeks back, which is fantastic to have him with us. Things are obviously a bit miserable out in general practice in lots of areas at the moment, and tough. But Nigel was talking about solutions and trying to look to the future. Part of that solution has to be to address the workforce crisis, and I know, and you've touched on that. That's something that's dear to your heart, and in fact that you lead on. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, obviously, the main job I've got is recruitment, and we're struggling a bit to get young doctors interested in general practice. But the other aspects are, as part of the 10-point plan that was launched last year, is to return doctors to general practice. So the National GP Induction Refresher Scheme is all about getting doctors to come back, supporting them into getting their skills back up to speed and becoming safe doctors. And also the induction scheme is about bringing in doctors from Europe and overseas who've got no experience of working in the NHS. And we all know of the bad stories that have been previously around Dr. Bami and people like that who've struggled and had problems. So the scheme is designed to be supportive and flexible.
Okay, and can you outline, because I suppose I mean, it's struck us at the moment how many of our friends are in fact doing the opposite and going abroad. And what you're saying is actually we can try, and there are people who want to do that from other countries. Can you outline, without going into too much detail, because there's a good website with some of the detail and the process on, I believe, which we'll link to at the bottom of this video. But just outline that for us. What are the requirements?
Okay, well, if the link is the GP National Recruitment Office website. So there's two big aspects to the scheme. There's the induction, which is for doctors who've never worked in the NHS, and that pretty much follows the learning needs assessment route. So that consists of an interview to review their career. They'll then be able to do an MCQ online, and they can do that anywhere in the world because we've got the selection centres in computer sites all over the world. And then, depending how they do, they may have to do simulated surgery as well. And then there will be a placement for them in a practice, which is supported with some bursary funding. And at the end of that, there's a report goes out that NHS England can sign off. For the refresher scheme, and there's two aspects to that. There is these are for doctors who've been out for more than 2 years from NHS general practice. And they will have a similar assessment, MCQ, and simulated surgery possibly, and placement. If, however, you're in Australia working in a similar, or New Zealand and South Africa, places like that, similar primary care system, you can do the portfolio route, which is new, and that's about collecting a portfolio of evidence while you're still working in that country, submitting it to us, and it's looked at by the Royal College of GPs, and that then leads to, if successful, a 1 month very short placement. So it can all be set up before you can come to the UK.
So is it not dissimilar to trainees, general practice? It sounds like there are a lot of parallels with the GP training scheme, is that?
Well, in the sense that you are using similar tools for selection into the system to check your suitability for the training programme and to support you in the programme. There's no exit assessments other than the workplace-based report, because we fully accept your qualifications, your skills, your knowledge. And it really is not so much as testing your competence, it's about just getting you to be culturally aware and capable of working in the NHS using the systems, the computer systems, referral systems, local stuff like that.
And when you say there's no assessment, does that mean anyone can come and work here if they go through the...
No, they will need to obviously be registered with the GMC, they need to comply with the regulations. They'll need to do the entry assessments, which are to see that they are safe to enter general practice and work there, which are the MCQ I've talked about, and the simulated surgery. But they're not exit assessments. They're not like the MRC GP. They're not pure knowledge testing. They're looking at how you apply your knowledge and skills rather than have you got the knowledge and skills.
I'm with you, because these are already qualified GPs, effectively. And so another one of the things we've talked about in the past is that these are, they go through this scheme, and I know you're working hard to help people navigate through that scheme because it must be very daunting when you're new to this country and the structure of our whole system. But they get through the scheme, and then, am I right in thinking they then quite quickly have to do an appraisal?
Right. Well, appraisal is quite important to the NHS nowadays. It's how we assess whether our doctors are safe and competent on an annual basis. When you're in the induction refresher scheme, you're actually being assessed all the time. So appraisal is parked. You don't need to do appraisal during that.
Yes. Because
there is a workplace-based report that's been compiled to go to NHS England. However, once you exit the scheme and are fully a licensed GP, there's an expectation to do an appraisal on an annual basis. So exiting from the scheme, NHS England expects people to do an appraisal within 3 to 6 months. So it's quite important as part of the scheme that you are preparing for your appraisal, because you're going to be faced with that fairly soon after you exit.
Yes, because I imagine actually 3 months, 6 months, it's not very long, is it actually? And if you, so how do you think all of us really, Health Education England, toolkit providers, if you like, are there ways we can try and help with that? Because you're obviously, we're working with trying to make the navigation of that induction and refresher scheme easier. But actually, I suppose it would be very easy to forget that suddenly you're then throwing these doctors out there. Well, not with the scheme, but this appraisal I can see actually can suddenly then come up and hit you, and that's what you're trying to address, isn't it?
I mean, for UK experienced doctors, they're probably, most of them are used to appraisal by now, so they understand the system and they understand the various tools and kits that have been around for using it. However, I think if you're an overseas doctor, you may have come from a system with no appraisal and a no understanding, and I think we do them a disservice if we don't help and guide them. So I very much want the INR scheme to include preparation for the appraisal that they've got to do. So they should be using their 3 or 6 month placements to prepare for that going forward. And there's lots of things we do within the INR scheme which support the collection of evidence. For instance, part of it is the MSF and the PSQs, and the MSF is the multi-source feedback, obviously, of your colleagues, and the PSQ is your patient satisfaction questionnaire. So that's part of the reporting they have to do.
Okay. And they can then use that for evidence.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the beauty. So if they can get on and do that in the programme, it then goes into their appraisal.
And do you think I think we've probably moved beyond this point now, but I know when the new medical strengthened appraisal, these days there's a much more, than when I started in general practice, reflection is the big key. But GP trainees and all undergraduate doctors, I think, postgraduate, doctors have had in training, they've sort of, for the last 8 to 10 years, reflection has been a huge part of that. So I think they come out of their training and actually that comes more naturally to them. They've had to do it in all their e-portfolios. We certainly struggled with that, who hadn't had that as part of our training quite as much. I imagine for doctors coming from other parts of the world, that must be quite a challenge.
It doesn't come naturally for some of them because of the way the teaching programmes are organised. Certainly the Royal College of GPs in the UK is looking for very reflective learning and practice. So it is a challenge, and it's not something, as you say, you and I were used to. We didn't do it that way.
So the things we can do are trying to encourage early engagement and early thinking about your appraisal. And it sounds like that's being built into the INR, the induction and refresher scheme, the placements. I
would like to see a lot of that happening, and I would encourage the doctors to be actually thinking when they start their 1 to 6 month placement that actually they're preparing for an appraisal after they exit the scheme. So therefore they should be collecting data in a portfolio of some sort, and they should be collecting the MSFs, the PSQs, the reflective statements and so forth to build up towards an appraisal. And they need to be looking, there's a web link on our website to various tools that you can use, some very useful and excellent.
Okay, well we'll post to that beneath this video. You're very well placed to sort of have an overview. Do you feel optimistic about, we've obviously have got a workforce crisis, if not already here, certainly feels like it's on the way.
Well, recruitment has held up this round despite the challenges.
Well, that's good.
But there is a big challenge that we've got to address, and certainly we want to bring GPs back in to return from their career breaks, and we want to bring people in from overseas, and we want to encourage them with a positive spin and give them support so that they can actually enter the system fairly quickly and easily.
And it sounds like you're doing a lot of positive work to actually make sure that that's the scheme to help these people is the best it can be, and to bring people in supported, which is great.
It still has challenges
yes.
around. But certainly there's a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork that needs to be done, but we're doing things to tackle that and make things smoother and better.
Fantastic. Oh, well, thank you very much, Richard. It's been great talking, and perhaps hopefully have you back at some stage if that would be.
Thank you very much.
Be okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Richard. We hope you found it interesting.
And we certainly plan to do some more of these interviews. But as I say, hoping it's interesting for all. But we mustn't forget, we're still pleased. Great if you want to ask any questions, and we will do our best to answer them. the problem is, I think, Phil, people probably don't realise, and this is episode 10, but we don't always talk about this. How would they ask a question if they wanted to?
So many ways. They can comment on the video below if you're watching this on YouTube. Contact us via the website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you never miss the latest episode. You can like us on Facebook and message us on there. Follow us on Twitter or tweet us at 14fish, or via our Instagram channel, which is surprisingly good actually. Yeah. We'd love to answer questions, or questions you'd like our guests to answer, or that you'd like us to pose to them, that sort of thing.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. I tell you, I'm finding this 22 for 22 hard. We some of you may have seen the post-traumatic stress disorder video module that Dr. Mark Coombe did. Really interesting.
Worth a watch. Free on our library. So just log in, go to library, and it's the top one.
Mark's videos are always great with the context he sort of puts on and relates to himself, but actually this one, he actually did serve in the forces. It's a fantastic video. It's certainly, I learnt a lot from watching it. The 22 for 22 is 22 press-ups for 22 days.
First days were quite easy. I'm now really struggling. I think I need, I'm going to need a break, and then...
Well, I did. I found it easy, but then I did Tough Mudder at the weekend, and after that is not as...
It's a full body workout.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like a complete idiot, I didn't realise that the reason it's 22 is because on average 22 servicemen and veterans, American servicemen and veterans, commit suicide every day. On average. I mean, imagine if that was the figures for a week means you're 140, we'd be... And so that's for America. Obviously, similar. You expect similar proportions for the UK. So really great issue to raise awareness of. Worth a look.
And we'll do our push-ups.
Yes,
perhaps.
Yes, we better. You're right.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for episode 11. Cool. Bye. Give me some orange. That's not good. Yeah.